Dear friends and delegates, as well as scholars, today I am going to speak on a very important topic in research activity, that is preparing a research proposal. All of us know every teacher, every researcher, every scholar desires to carry out a research. And for that reason, there is a need for a discipline to be maintained in the framework of research methodology. And the actual process of beginning of the research activity starts when we prepare a very correct, very comprehensive, very research methodology oriented proposal of the research. In this backdrop, I am trying to place before you various details, various issues, various aspects, various components of preparing a research proposal. I am going to do this with the help of PowerPoint presentation. With the help of PowerPoint presentation. Basically, when we talk about research activity, research proposal is very much important, and how to prepare that, what preparation is required, what methodology, knowledge and background preparation is required, what exercise is necessary to be undertaken. These are the things which are very much necessary to be taken into account while talking about research in general and research proposal in particular. So far as my lecture is concerned, it is divided basically into introduction, meaning and importance of research, preparing a research proposal, and concluding remarks. Now just as a background preparation, unless and until you know the concept of research, meaning of the research, rather it will not be possible to prepare a research proposal. In this backdrop, just I am trying to place before you, you might be knowing, all of you might be knowing what is meant by research, but as a background preparation, just I am explaining what is research. Scientific and systematic research on a specific topic is called research. According to Advanced Learner's Dictionary, a careful investigation or inquiry, specifically through search for new facts in any branch of knowledge, is called as research. Redman and Mori define research as a systematized effort to gain new knowledge is research. That is, gaining a new knowledge is part and parcel of research. Woody very comprehensively defines what is meant by research. He says defining, redefining problems, formulating hypotheses, suggested solutions, collecting, organizing, evaluating data, making deductions and reaching conclusions, and at least carefully testing the conclusions and to determine whether they fit the formulating hypothesis is called as research. Now, research is carried out having number of objectives, can be gain familiarity with a phenomenon or insights, to portray accurately the characteristics of a particular individual, situation or group, to determine the frequency with which something occurs or which it is associated, something else. To test a hypothesis of the causal relationships between different variables. There can be different motivations in carrying out research. For preparing a research proposal as a background preparation, what is required is what are the different types of research are there. Because unless and until you know the types of research, you are not in a position to define or identify what type of your research is. And therefore, different types of research are there: descriptive research, analytical research, applied research, fundamental research, quantitative research, qualitative research, conceptual research, empirical research. Other types are also there. Different types are there based on time, based on utility, applicability. Other types of research are also there. There are two research approaches which are also necessary to be taken into account when we talk about research, and in particular research proposal. That is quantitative research and qualitative research, and it has implications in the preparation of a research proposal. Now, the basic things which requires to be taken into account: why research is carried out. The research is carried out for progress and development of the economy, for logical thinking. It can be a aid to government policy formulation implementation. It can be the basis of economic policy and implementation that enables decision making by the government policy makers. It is useful for a country to solving economic problems, social problems. It can help us in maintaining social relationships. In addition to that, it is useful for us in obtaining MA, MPhil, PhD degrees, which are prominently research based. It can be a source of livelihood. Research can help us in new ideas and insights, and more prominently, it is useful for us in generalizations and critical evaluations of the theory. Now, directly, I am moving towards the topic of a lecture, that is a research proposal. Now, basically, this research proposal can be for MPhil research. It is useful for PhD research. It is also useful for a research project. Any research proposal must be divided into all 11 parts or sections. Number one, introduction. Number two, review of research studies. Number three, statement of research problem. It can include research questions. Number four, research methodology. Number five, objectives of research. Number six, hypothesis of the research. It can also include research questions. Chapter scheme, importance of the research, limitations of the research, further area of research, and the references that we have referred to. Number one part is introduction, and introduction is just you are to introduce that topic of research, what it is, how it is, why your desires to carry out the research, what other researchers have carried out research on the topic, what has been very important, how it is very important, how you are going to justify. You can also make use of some statistical data in the introduction part also. Prominently in introduction, no rules are there, but in introduction should be 10 to 15 lines, and prominently it should be to justify how it is important to carry out research on the topic that you have chosen. And in addition to that, you have also take help of other researchers and their research also in introductory part. Now, in the second part, that is review of research studies and literature. Reviewing research studies is different, and review of just literature is different. Review of research studies is very much important because it is useful for us in identifying, recognizing what gaps are there, lapses are there in the research relating to the topic on which we are working or we want to work on. Then what type of research literature we can make use of for review of research studies or research literature? Number one, those can be research papers, those can be research articles, those can be MPhil dissertations, those can be PhD theses, those can be research projects. Now, how to carry out the research? You have what is the nature of review of research literature or research studies? Number one, you have to take into account what is the background of the study, what background in which this study has been carried out. You have to get acquainted with what are the methods of research the research has used. You have to take into account research methodology that is applied in carrying out that research. You have to take into consideration what aspects of the topic have been covered and what has not been covered, what has been missed out, what is the period of study, what statistical techniques have been used for the analysis of data, what are the major conclusions, and what are the policy suggestions. Those are necessary to be taken into consideration in the review of research literature, research studies. And whatever is missed out, that we have to make it separate, and these are the missing aspects, these are the missing issues on which you have to give emphasis or focus on your research study. And in this framework, in these stages, you have to review research literature or research studies. So third part is statement of the research problem. Any research topic you choose is a problem. That can be an economic problem, that can be a social problem, that can be political problem, that can be environmental problem. Any problem, it is a problem that can be your research topic or research or study area. Now, in this statement of problem, what is necessary to be analyzed? It is necessary to analyze how this problem is, what's its nature, what's its extent, what's its intensity, and that to be analyzed with the help of some statistical data. It is not just haphazardly or going to explain. You have to support some statistical information, and you have to explain and analyze, elucidate how that problem is, what is its nature, what is its extent, what is its intensity, what is its gravity, with the help of some statistical data. You have to mention what is the branch of your subject in which your topic of research comes. Then exactly how to define topic of research, we can say title. Then what are the major problems relating to that topic? What can be sub-problems? What can be minor problems relating to that topic? You have to describe that, you have to identify that, you have to incorporate. And I have mentioned you should have some data support, adequate data support. Otherwise, it will not be possible to prepare a research problem. Now, in this statement of problem, on the one hand, you have to describe what the research problem is, what are the different sub-problems, minor problems relating to that problem are. And in addition to that, you have to also justify the topic of research, why you want to take up that topic, why you want to carry out a research on that particular topic, why you want to analyze that particular problem, phenomenon. That justification is necessary to be given in the framework of theory, in the framework of area, in the framework of period, in the framework of contribution to research relating to the topic. Number of perspectives can be there within the framework of that. You have to justify the topic of research that is necessary. Nowadays, in the statement of problem also, research questions are being incorporated, small research questions. Those explain, those indicate small sub-problems, that those to be asked and those to be incorporated in the research problem. That brings about objectivity, that brings about specificity, and therefore nowadays research questions, that is, those explain minor problems, sub-problems relating to that major problem that you want to explain, you want to discuss, you want to analyze, you want to examine, that is necessary to be mentioned. Now, this part is very important. We call it as a research methodology. In this, you have to mention what type of your research is, what is your research methodology, what methods of research you want to apply, what is your period of study, what are the sources of data, what is your sampling technique and design, what are the techniques of data analysis you want to use, whether you are making use of maps, graphs, figures, whether you are making use of computer softwares like Excel, SPSS, that is necessary to be mentioned. Already I have mentioned in the beginning that different types of research are there, out of which the topic on which you are working, what type of that research will be. Here you have to mention whether it is a descriptive research, whether it is analytical research, or any type of research. Already you should have that background of types of research that you have to mention. Then secondly, research methodology. Research methodology is a way to systematically solve the research problem. How you are carrying out that research, what steps you are following in research activity completion, what procedure you are going to carry out so as to complete that research activity, that is to be mentioned. And therefore, methodology, research methodology is the procedure. It is the procedure through which you carry out a research, that to be mentioned, that is research methodology. Now, different methods of research are there. Library method is there, experimental method is there, historical method is there. Of which method you are using, you are applying, necessary to be mentioned. And simultaneously, you have to also mention what are the methods of data collection, what is the method of sampling, what are the methods of data analysis, how you are going to analyze the data, how you are going to collect the primary data, how you are going to sample the responders, how you are going to collect the secondary data, that you have to mention. That is methods of data collection, methods of sampling, methods of data analysis. That is also necessary to be incorporated in this particular part. Then you have to mention period of study. What is your period of study? What period it is going to cover? Whether it is pre-independence, whether it is post-independence, whether it is post-planning, whether it is post-economic reforms. That you have to mention so far a period of study is concerned. Then sources of data. What are the sources of secondary data? How you are going to collect the secondary data? What type of secondary data you are going to collect? That you have to mention. And if it is primary data, whether you are going to administer a questionnaire, you are going to conduct an interview, you are going to hold discussions, that you have to mention. If you are using primary data, then sampling is inevitable. What sampling method you are using, what is your sample design, what is, whether it is random sampling, whether it is not random sampling, what is sampling size, what is the sampling area, what is stratification of sampling, that you have to mention in detail. What is the sample size you are choosing and why you are choosing. We call it as a justification of sample size. And there are some statistical methods, those helpful for us in deciding justification of sample size. You collect the primary data by administering the questionnaire, that you have to mention here. I am going to collect necessary primary data by administering the questionnaire. Then after you have to mention how you are going to analyze the data. Before that, you have to mention how you are going to process the data. That is scrutiny of the data, editing of the data, tabulation of the data. That you have to mention how you are going to do that. And then you have to explain, you have to mention, you have to include how you are going to analyze the data, what methods you want to use, especially statistical techniques or statistical tools, so as to analyze the data, whether measures of central tendency, mean, mode, median, measures of dispersion, standard deviation, coefficient of variation, methods of association, correlation, regression, methods. In addition to that, your proposal should have hypothesis. I will explain later on. And if it is hypothesis, how you are testing that hypothesis, means what statistical method you are using so as to test that hypothesis, that you have to mention. You can mention, I am using maps, graphs, figures wherever necessary, so as to depict the trends in important variables which are into consideration. You have to mention, I'm using computer softwares like Excel, Spaces, others are also there, that you have to mention. The package of all these things, type of research, methodology, methods of research, period of study, sources of data, sampling, technique design, data analysis methods, and all others. That package is known as research methodology. Now, the next part is objectives of the research. In this objectives of the research, number one, objective should be specific and particular relating to research topic. It should be one sentence. It should not be complicated and complex. That becomes very difficult. Then what should be number of objectives? 5, okay, 6, fine, 7, last. We should not cross the total number of objectives more than 7. More the objectives, more the scope. And more the scope, that becomes very difficult. Time is there, money is there, everything becomes costly. So maximum objective 7. Then objective should be specific. Then objective should be relating to research problem, major problem, smaller problem, minor problem, sub-problem. Objective should be relating to those. And there should be linkage, interlinking, and associationship between the different objectives as well as the research problems. Because objectives explain what problems you are handling, what problems you want to tackle. And for that reason, objective should be particular, specific, and it should be limited in number, and it should be in one sentence. Hypothesis should be incorporated in a research proposal because that makes a study unbiased, impartial, and within the framework of research methodology and research discipline. And all of us know research hypothesis is a probable, it's a possible answer to that research problem that we have studied. Hypothesis should be in single sentence. There are two types, null hypothesis and alternative hypothesis. We call it as H0 and H1 or HA. That is necessary to be mentioned. Hypothesis should be particular, specific. It should be linked to the objectives, or those objectives we want to analyze with the help of statistical data should be converted into hypothesis. Hypothesis should be quantifiable. It should be testable with the help of statistical methods. You have to decide which method is suitable and appropriate that you are using, that you have to mention. Then you have to analyze whether hypothesis is accepted or rejected. And what does this mean? What is its interpretation that you have to mention? Prominently, you have to make use of the statistical methods to test hypothesis. T-test is there, Z-test is there, chi-square test is there, F-test, other number of methods are there, of which is suitable method, why you are using, and how to decide whether a hypothesis tested, it is approved or disproved, that you have to mention. And there is a need for making a use of tables, statistical tables in the research methodology book, T-tables, F tables, chi-square tables, so as to decide whether hypothesis proved or disproved, and interpretation of the values of the test that you have applied, all those necessary to be mentioned in the research hypothesis. Then chapter scheme. Chapter scheme should be in moderate number. It should not be less, or it should not be excessive so far as the number of chapters is concerned. While preparing the chapter scheme, you should consider objectives. Chapter scheme should be neat and clear. Chapter scheme should be like this. Chapter 1, Introduction and Research Methodology. Chapter 2, View of Research Study. Chapter 3, the Profile of Study Area. Chapter 5 should be based on Objective 1 that you want to analyze. Chapter next should be relating to Objective number 2 that you want to analyze. Chapter 6, again relating to Objective that you want to analyze with the help of data. Chapter 6, same way. Chapter 7, based on the objective that you want to analyze. And chapter 8 is major conclusions and policy suggestions. In major conclusions, you have to draw inferences in accordance with the objectives that you analyze with the help of statistical data. And that we have to enlist 1, 2, 3, 4 like that. And it can be enlisted objective-wise in brief, that is major conclusions. In policy suggestions, what are major problems, sub-problems, minor problems you identify, those problems, how those can be tackled, what measures and policies can be useful, remedies can be useful, that you have to mention, which will be helpful for the policy formulation and policy making. That is what we call it as a policy suggestions. Thus, chapter scheme is very important, and this should be Introduction and Research Methodology, Theory of Research Studies, the Profile of Study Area, Objective 1, 2, 3, 4 that you want to analyze, major conclusions and policy suggestions. Then you have to incorporate bibliography. Bibliography should be alphabetically. Bibliography should be of books, reference books, then journals, then projects, then theses, dissertations, and also articles, and alphabetically. You have to also incorporate questionnaire or schedule at the time of submission of final thesis. Then you have to mention why you want to carry out a research, what is importance of a research topic. Number 1, how it is going to contribute to the theory, relating to that topic, how your research is going to contribute to the research relating to your topic, how your research uh, fulfills lapses and gaps, those were there relating to topic that you have chosen to mention here, how your research is useful for policy making, policy formulation and implementation, especially solving the socio-economic and environmental problems that you have to mention. Then you have to mention how it is going to contribute to the literature on topic of research. That is also necessary to be mentioned. You have to describe how your research will be useful for the researchers, how it will be useful for the teachers, how it will be useful for the students, that you have to mention. All of us know every research is imperfect. It cannot be perfect. Something remains. And what has remained that you have to mention freely and openly. We call it as limitations of the research study. And whatever is missed out, whatever is remain, that is a further area of research. Now, what can be missed out? Period of study can be missed out. Some aspects can be missed out. Some data you have used second data, you have not used primary data. Primary data missed out. You have used primary data, you have not used secondary data. Secondary data missed out. That you have to mention. Data sources, some sources you have not used. That can be your limitation. Data is inadequate. That can be your limitation. Then scope of the study, some aspects you have touched upon, some aspect you have not touched upon, that can be your limitation. Then area can be different, and area wise problems can be different. So your study can be studied with the help of area to the other areas, with reference to the other areas, and that can be a limitation. Then techniques of data analysis, you have used only descriptive statistics, you have not used correlation, regression, or measures of variation. That can be a limitation that you have to mention. Whatever has been remained, especially relating to the topic, aspects relating to different components of the topic, that is your further area of research. And that further area of research is to be mentioned, and that can be studied for your research papers or research articles. That can be studied for MPhil dissertations of your students, that can be covered under PhD theses of your students, or that can be your topic for the research project also. Thus, you have to mention limitations, and you have to identify what is the further area of research, and you have to describe how you are going to incorporate, how you are going to use that in the future or in the coming future, that you have to mention. It is therefore for any research proposal is very important. Unless and until you prepare a very correct, very comprehensive, very reliable, very research frameworked research proposal, it will not be possible to carry out a research, to carry out a research. And it is therefore preparing a research proposal is very important. And that should be within the framework of research methodology. That should be within the framework of different stages of research proposal. That should be very specific, very objective, very unbiased, very particular, and then only you can prepare a proposal, you can carry out a research, and that research will be useful for policymakers, maybe local government, maybe state government, maybe central government, maybe planning commission, Niti Ayog, maybe different bodies of the government, that can be there. But the thing is that your research proposal should be very specific, very particular, quantifiable, very objective. It can be converted into uh, mm, quantification. And in addition to that, you should make use of computer software. You should make use of both primary and secondary data. You should make use of data analysis, quantitative techniques, that is mean, mode, median, correlation, regression. You should test hypothesis. You should have test hypothesis and testing of the hypothesis. The sum totality of that gives us what we call it as a research proposal. And already I have mentioned that your research topic can have limitations. Don't bother, don't worry. those limitations can be your further area of research. And it is therefore try to be more specific, more particular, more objective, more research based, more quantitative techniques based, more research discipline. Then and then only it will be possible to prepare research proposal. It will be important, it will be significant, it will be crucial, and that research will contribute in number of ways to the theory, to the policymaker, to tackling socioeconomic environmental problems, also for the welfare of the society, and many more. And therefore, try to prepare a research proposal which is within the framework of what I am trying to place before you, the framework of methodology, and go through the different stages, steps, whereby you can prepare a research proposal which is very useful, which will be very useful. Uh, that is there. It is therefore, first of all, choose a topic and choose topic by summary of research studies and go into the details, then a review of research studies, background, nature, etc. And once your topic is finalized, title of topic should be very catchy, very short, very specific, very particular, and henceforth, once your topic is finalized, henceforth you can uh, go for preparing a research proposal. But for that reason, background is necessary, background preparation is necessary, going through the books of research methodology is required, some data collection is required, some going through studies required, how structure of synopsis is to prepare, all those things you take into account. And once your topic is finalized, once your topic is fixed, henceforth prepare a background and go through different stages and prepare a research proposal that is necessary. I am damn sure in the framework of that, if you try it, definitely your proposal will be the best and that will help you for your MPhil degree, PhD degree and research project as well. And more importantly, it will be useful for the policy makers that is there. I hope in that direction, just endeavor honestly, rigorously and sincerely.